Last year, Leica brought out the SL3 and I loved it. I thought it was the most complete Leica camera that I'd used. It felt like a real kind of step up from the SL2. So for me, I absolutely fell in love with it and I fully understood kind of why Leica cameras cost what they cost and actually how they perform and how they feel. There's a lot to the experience of shooting with a Leica camera, right? It's not just a camera, there's kind of more to it. And if you're looking at getting into the Leica ecosystem, or if you're looking at upgrading maybe to something like the SL3, how do you decide between that camera and the SL3-S, which is much more recent, and actually at first glance looks incredibly similar and certainly feels very, very similar in the hands, but offers some slightly different specs, something slightly different in the experience of shooting with it, and of course a different price point. We're going to look at how you can choose between the two, which one's going to be right for you. We're not really going to be comparing these with other cameras that offer maybe similar things or similar things like that, because if you're looking at getting a Leica camera, then I really think you're looking at getting a Leica camera. They kind of offer something a little bit unique in that sense. It's just something quite special. Now let's start with some of the similarities, because it really is, there's a lot of similarities between these two cameras, right? We see the same size and weight, the same design as well. They look and feel basically the same. They both have the same image stabilization. They both have the same tilting screen. So not a fully articulating screen, but a tilt screen, which is really useful for certain types of photography. They both have a beautiful viewfinder, 5.76 million dots, and it really does. I mean, it looks fantastic when you're taking photos, whether that's landscape, portrait, whatever it might be. Both of them have that IP54 rating as well. So they're absolutely able to stand up to harsh conditions, which is really quite cool actually. And the connections on the side, which again are the same between the two cameras, both have the rubber doors over the connections, which again just helps with that rating. It really does mean you can take this out in unfavorable conditions. Something else that I really like about the SL3 and the SL3-S actually is the menu system, which is the same across both cameras. And this is something that we really praised in our review of the SL3. It's a lovely menu system. It's really straightforward, and that is shared between the two cameras. It's just so easy to navigate to what you want to change, and you can actually customize the cameras in such clever ways, right? Just holding down buttons to be able to then set what that button does. So I think it's fair to say they both look very similar, and in a lot of ways they perform very similarly, but there are some key differences here. So the SL3-S is rocking a 24 megapixel sensor, whereas the original SL3 is a 60 megapixel sensor. So if you want that higher resolution, then the SL3 is the way to go. But the SL3-S, offering a 24 megapixel sensor, does have some interesting advantages. First of all, for most situations, 24 megapixels is still absolutely enough, right? Realistically, unless you want to do some pretty heavy cropping, 24 megapixels is fine, and it means you get much smaller file sizes, which can also be quite useful. With that slightly lower resolution, the SL3-S is designed definitely with things like journalism in mind. So it's a little bit faster, a little bit snappier. Those file sizes come into play when you think about it like that as well. And where the SL3 could shoot 4 frames a second in 14-bit mode or 5 frames a second in 12-bit mode, so not particularly fast, the SL3-S can do 7 frames a second in 12-bit, or with the electronic shutter, it can do 30 frames a second in 12-bit. And that is with autofocus. So the SL3 could do 15 frames a second with the electronic shutter, but that's with a locked autofocus. So here we're seeing faster frame rates and with autofocus as well. So that means if you want to be able to shoot like that, the speed is absolutely with the SL3-S. And just sticking on that kind of journalism side of things as well, we actually see content authenticity built into the SL3-S as well, which I think is a really cool thing to see, because we don't see that on the SL3. But it maybe feels a little bit more important when you are looking at it through the lens, no pun intended, of maybe journalism. The SL3-S also adds in phase detect autofocus, which just makes it a little bit faster and a little bit more accurate as well. I would say it is actually noticeable as well. I actually thought the autofocus on the SL3 was completely fine, and I actually never really thought about it. But considering with the SL3-S, you might be shooting a little bit quicker, right? A little bit more from the hip, a little bit having to react to situations, then I think actually having that slightly better autofocus probably makes sense. The final big difference between the cameras is the price, right? The original SL3 comes in just under £6,000, whereas the SL3-S, you're looking at more around £4,500. So it's quite a big difference when you consider, pretty much £1,500, at least in the UK, means the difference between a really nice lens or maybe even a couple of lenses, something like that, which can make a big difference depending on the kind of stuff you want to shoot. So it really comes down to what is most important to you, right? Higher resolution or maybe a little bit faster and also not as expensive. They very much belong to the same family, right? The SL3 family, but just going in slightly different directions, which I actually think is really cool because I think more options is just, it's always good, right? Because you can really tailor which camera you want based on the kind of photography that you shoot. Now, I've not really touched on video here either. Both cameras actually offer some pretty serious video specifications as well. 8K with the SL3, 6K with the SL3-S, but actually both are able to shoot video in quite a meaningful way, which I think is great. So either way, if you want to incorporate video into what you're doing, I think that both of these cameras can absolutely handle that. Just again, slightly higher resolution with the original SL3, which makes sense, right? With the higher resolution sensor. So I'd love to know which one of these two cameras actually works better for you. Would you maybe look at the SL3-S and a lens for a similar sort of price to the SL3, or are you really taken in by that higher resolution capability of the original SL3? I've got to say, both of these cameras are wonderful. If you pick either one of these, you are absolutely going to get a great experience in that Leica ecosystem. And there is just something about a Leica camera, just feels fantastic to shoot with. I'd love to know your thoughts, so let me know down in the comments. Of course, you can check out both cameras by checking out the links down in the description of this video as well. I will, of course, see you in the next video, but until then, as always, thanks for watching.